Recording in progress.
Okay, there we go. Still the second, and so we're still in Scrutinies, last section of the Red Book, and I'm raving today because this is the final day with this book, and I really need to give it back as soon as possible. So I am zooming through it for that reason, so probably the fastest and hardest to keep up with section. I have page 345, Scrutinies goes to 359, 14 more pages, and then there's an epilogue. Let's see if I can manage this.
Recording in progress.
Okay, gonna test my shamanic speaking skills. See how much logos I can summon. So, Scrutinies 4. I did as my soul advised, and formed in matter the thoughts that she gave me. She spoke often and at length to me about the wisdom that lies behind us. See Appendix C, Jan 16, 1916. That's the preliminary sketch of the cosmology of the Seven Sermons. Seems to refer to the composition of the Systema Mundi. Anyway, we'll get to that, essentially. She's at length about the wisdom that lies behind us. But one night she suddenly came to me with a sense of unease and anxiety and exclaimed, this is Jan 18, 1916, "What am I seeing? What does the future harbour? Blazing fire. A fire hovers in the air. It draws near. A flame, many flames. A searing miracle. How many lights burn? My beloved, it is the mercy of the eternal fire. The breath of fire descends on you." But I cried out in horror, "I fear something terrible and dreadful. I am deeply afraid, since the things that you announced beforehand were awful. Must everything be broken, burned, and destroyed?" "Patience," she said, and stared out into the distance. "Fire surrounds you, an immeasurable sea of embers. Don't torture me. What dreadful mysteries do you possess? Speak, I implore you, or are you lying again, damned tormenting spirit, deceiving fiend? What are your treacherous spectres supposed to mean?" That was him, I guess. But she answered calmly, "I also want your fear." "For what? To torment me?" But she continued, "To bring it before the ruler of this world. He demands the sacrifice of your fear. He appreciates your sacrifice. He," and this is Abraxas at this point, "he has mercy upon you." We'll get to that as well. "He has mercy upon you." Mercy upon me? What is that supposed to mean? I want to hide myself from him. My face shrinks from the ruler of this world, for it is branded, it bears a mark, it beheld the forbidden. Therefore I avoid the ruler of this world. "But you should come before him," she said. "He has heard about your fear. You instilled this fear in me. Why did you give me away? You have been summoned to serve him." She said, "You have been summoned to serve him." And then he goes, "But I moaned and exclaimed, 'Thrice damned fate, why can't you leave me in seclusion? Why has he chosen me for sacrifice? Thousands would gladly throw themselves before him. Why must it be me? I cannot, I don't want to.' But the soul said, 'You possess the word that should not be allowed to remain concealed.'" This is a critical passage. "You possess the word that should not be allowed to remain concealed." "What is my word?" I answered. "It is the stammering of a miner. It is my poverty and my incapacity, my inability to do otherwise. And you want to drag this before the ruler of the world?" But she looked straight into the distance and said, "I see the surface of the earth, and smoke sweeps over it. A sea of fire rolls close in from the north. It is setting the towns and villages on fire, plunging over the mountains, breaking through the valleys, burning the forests. People are going mad. You go before the fire in a burning robe with singed hair, a crazy look in your eyes, a parched tongue, a hoarse and foul-sounding voice. You forge ahead, you announce what approaches, you scale the mountains, you go into every valley and stammer words of fright and proclaim the fire's agony. You bear the mark of the fire, and men are horrified at you. They do not see the fire, they do not believe your words, but they see your mark and unknowingly suspect you to be the messenger of the burning agony. 'What fire?' they ask. 'What fire?' You stutter, you stammer. 'What do you know about a fire?' I looked at the embers, I saw the blazing flames. May God save us." "My soul," I cried in despair, "speak, explain what I should proclaim. Explain, what should I proclaim? The fire? Which fire? Look up, see the flames that blaze over your head. Look up, the skies redden." With these words, my soul vanished. But I remained anxious and confused for many days, and my soul remained silent and was not to be seen. Jan 29, 1916. But one night, a dark crowd knocked at my door, and I trembled with fear. Then my soul appeared and said in haste, "They are here, and will tear open your door." "So that the wicked herd can break into my garden? Should I be plundered and thrown out onto the street? You make me into an ape and a child's plaything. When, O my gods, shall I be saved from this hell of fools? But I want to hack to pieces your cursed webs. Go to hell, you fools. What do you want with me?" And she interrupted me and said, "What are you talking about? Let the dark ones speak." I retorted, "How can I trust you? You work for yourself, not for me. What good are you if you can't even protect me from the devil's confusion?" "Be quiet," she replied, "or else you'll disturb the work." And as she spoke these words, behold, Philemon come up to me, dressed in the white robe of a priest, and lay his hand on my shoulder. Then I said to the Dark Ones, "So speak, you dead." And immediately they cried in many voices. And just before that, on the significance of the sermons that follow, Jung said to Emilia Jaff that the discussions with the dead form the prelude to what he would subsequently communicate to the world, and that their content anticipated his later books. Quote, "From that time on, the dead have become ever more distinct for me as the voices of the unanswered, unresolved, and unredeemed. The questions he was required to answer," this is commentary now, "the questions Jung was required to answer did not come from the world around him, but from the dead. One element that astonished him was the fact that the dead appeared to know no more than they did when they died. One would have assumed that they had attained greater knowledge since death. This explained the tendency of the dead to encroach upon life, and why in China important family matters have to be reported to the ancestors. He felt that the dead were waiting for the answers of the living." Anyway, so they cried in many voices. "We have come back from Jerusalem, where we did not find what we sought. And again, above, see page 294, in which, I forget which section, in which dead Anabaptists, led by Ezekiel, were heading to Jerusalem to pray at the holy places. They've since, as we've said, come back. They've come back and have not found what they sought. They said, "We implore you to let us in. You have what we desire, not your blood, but your light. That is it." Then Philemon lifted his voice and taught them, saying, and this is the first sermon to the dead, and there's a long footnote here which I will consider. I don't know if I'll read all of it. So we're about to begin the first sermon to the dead. This is from Philemon, and the footnote goes, "Jung's calligraphic and printed versions of the sermons bear the subheading, 'The Seven Instructions of the Dead,' written by Basilides in Alexandria, where the east touches the west, translated from the original Greek text into the German language. Basilides was a Christian philosopher in Alexandria in the first part of the 2nd century. Little is known about his life, only fragments of his teaching have survived, none in his own hand, and they present a cosmogonic myth. According to Charles King, Basilides was by birth an Egyptian, converted to Christianity, beforehand followed the doctrines of Oriental Gnosis, endeavored to combine tenets of Christianity and Gnosticism. For this purpose, chose expressions of his own invention and ingenious symbols." Okay, seems an interesting guy. There's then a deep expression of classical Gnostic myths. I won't go into what follows. Basically, Jung involved in serious study of Gnosticism between 1918 and 26, studied a lot through that period. The sort of study of early Gnosticism is important to this formation of the symbol, the living symbol. And Jung discusses Basilides in Ion, 1951. So it basically referred to Ion. Blah blah blah. Yeah, he was already reading Gnostic literature in preparation for Transformation Symbols of the Libido, 1912. Basically about Jung's relation to Gnosticism. Anyway, not so important. So let's move on. The first sermon, going from Philemon to the dead, saying, "Now here, I begin with nothingness. Nothingness is the same as the fullness. In infinity, full is as good as empty. Nothingness is empty and full. You might just as well say anything else about nothingness. For instance, that it is white or black, or that it does not exist, or that it exists. That which is endless and eternal has no qualities, since it has all qualities. We call this nothingness or fullness the pleroma." Footnote: this is a Gnostic term, pleroma or fullness. Central role in the Valentinian system. Hans Jonas, who we know as a modern communicator of Gnosticism, an important one, states, quote, "Pleroma is the standard term for the fully explicated manifold of divine characteristics, whose standard number is 30, forming a hierarchy and together constituting the divine realm." That's the message of the alien god in the beginnings of Christianity. Jonas' book. Jung said, "The Gnostics express it as a pleroma, a state of fullness where the pairs of opposites, yea and nay, day and night, are together. Then when they become, it is either day or night." in the state of promise before they become, they are non-existent. There is neither white nor black, good nor bad. Jung later used the term pleroma to designate a state of pre-existence and potentiality, identifying it with the Tibetan Bardo. Quote, he must accustom himself to the idea that time is a relative concept and needs to be compensated by the concept of a simultaneous Bardo or pleromatic existence of all historical processes. What exists in the pleroma as an eternal process appears in time as a periodic sequence, That is to say, it is repeated many times in an irregular pattern. That's an answer to Job. Distinction Jung draws between the pleroma and the creation has some points of contact with Meister Eckhart's differentiation between the Godhead and God. Jung commented on this in Psychological Types, paragraph 429. Jung equated the pleroma with the alchemist Gerhardus Dorn's notions of the unus mundus, one world, that's mysterium conjunctionis. Jung adopted this expression to designate the transcendental postulate of the unity underlying the multiplicity of the empirical world. That's all about the pleroma. Okay, so this was Fleeman. We call this nothingness or fullness the pleroma. Therein both thinking and being cease, since the eternal and endless possess no qualities. No one is in it, for he would then be distinct from the pleroma, and would possess qualities that would distinguish him from something distinct from the... No one is in it, for he would then be distinct from the pleroma, and would possess qualities that would distinguish him as something distinct from the pleroma. In the pleroma, there is nothing and everything. It is fruitless to think about the pleroma, for this would mean self-dissolution. Creation is not in the pleroma, but in itself. The pleroma is the beginning and the end of creation. Footnote. In Psychological Types, Jung described Tao as the creative being, begetting as the father and bringing forth as the mother. It is the beginning and end of all beings. Some relation between the pleroma and the Chinese Tao. The creation is not in the pleroma, but in itself. The pleroma is the beginning and the end of creation. It pervades creation, just as the sunlight pervades the air. Although the pleroma is altogether pervasive, creation has no share in it, just as the wholly transparent body becomes neither light nor dark through the light pervading it. We are, however, the pleroma itself, for we are a part of the eternal and the endless, but we have no share therein, as we are infinitely removed from the pleroma, not spatially or temporally, but essentially, in italics, since we are distinguished from the pleroma in our essence as creation, which is confined within time and space. Yet because we are parts of the pleroma is also in us. Even in the smallest point, the pleroma is endless, eternal, and whole, since small and great are qualities that are contained in it. It is nothingness that is whole and continuous throughout. Only figuratively, therefore, do I speak of creation as part of the pleroma, because actually the pleroma is nowhere divided, since it is nothingness. We are also the whole pleroma, because, figuratively, the pleroma is the smallest point in us, merely assumed not existing, and the boundless firmament about us. But why then do we speak of the pleroma at all, if it is everything and nothing? I speak about it in order to begin somewhere, and also to free you from the delusion that somewhere without or within there is something fixed or in some way established from the outset. Every so-called fixed and certain thing is only relative. That alone is fixed and certain, that is subject to change. That alone is fixed and certain, that is subject to change. Creation, however, is subject to change. Therefore, it alone is fixed and determined because it has qualities. Indeed, it is quality itself. Thus we ask, how did the creation come into being? Creatures came into being, but not creation, since creation is the very quality of the pleroma, as much as non-creation, eternal death. Creation is ever present, and so is death. The pleroma has everything, differentiation and non-differentiation. Differentiation is creation. It is differentiated. Differentiation in its essence, and therefore it differentiates. Therefore, man differentiates, since his essence is differentiation. Therefore, he also differentiates the qualities of the pleroma that do not exist. He differentiates them on account of his own essence. Therefore, he must speak of those qualities of the pleroma that do not exist. You say, what use is there in speaking about it at all? But you yourself, did you yourself not say that it is not worth thinking about the pleroma? No, sorry. I mentioned that to free you from the delusion that we are able to think about the pleroma. When we distinguish the qualities of the pleroma, we are speaking from the ground of our own differentiated state, and about our own differentiation, but have effectively said nothing about the pleroma. Yet we need to speak about our own differentiation, so that we may sufficiently differentiate ourselves. Our very nature is differentiation. If we are not true to this nature, we do not differentiate ourselves enough. We must therefore make distinctions between qualities. You ask, what harm is there in not differentiating oneself? If we do not differentiate, we move beyond our essence, beyond creation, and we fall into non-differentiation, which is the other quality of the pleroma. We fall into the pleroma itself and cease to be created beings. We lapse into disillusion in nothingness. This is the death of the creature. Therefore we die to the same extent that we do not differentiate. Hence the creature's essence strives towards differentiation, and struggles against primeval perilous sameness. This is called the principium individuationis. That's a notion from Schopenhauer. Quote, this is Shamdasani. He defined space and time, this is Schopenhauer, as the principium individuationis, noting that he had borrowed the expression from scholasticism, which we talked about in chapter 2 in the series in psychological types. The principium individuationis was the possibility of multiplicity. That's world as will and representation. From it designates the uniqueness of each individual set against the all-one unconscious, essentially. In 1912, Jung wrote, "Diversity arises from individuation. This fact validates an essential part of Schopenhauer's and Hartmann's philosophy in profound psychological terms." Obviously developed in Individuation and Collectivity, Jung's essay, Collected Works 18. Jung defined it as follows: the concept of individuation plays no minor role in our psychology. Individuation is, in general, the process of the formation and particularization of individual beings, especially the development of the psychological individual, as a being distinct from generality, from collective psychology. Individuation, therefore, is a process of differentiation, having for its goal the development of the individual personality. We can see here a bit more clarity about how the transcendent function as a notion intersects with that of individuation, and how Jung gave up work on the transcendent function, forsaking it for his later expressions about individuation. It's essentially this where the transcendent function is kind of this down and back within into introversion, and the inner conflict leading to the symbol, which allows for extroverted creative expression in the world, and then this ongoing back and forthing introversion, extroversion, where the transcendent function is giving rise to this symbol understanding and creating process that allows adaptation within the world. This is essentially individuation is different a little, and this is a sketch in the sense that it has a real emphasis on the formation and particularization of individual beings. It's kind of like this focus on what is the point of the transcendent function, what is it innate of, and it's complexifying in the sense that that's from Viveki of this integrating, differentiating, particularizing, and synthesizing from out of the unconscious. Anyway, leaving that behind, what we said was, as Philemon said, therefore we lapse into disillusion, into nothing. This is the death of the creature. Therefore we die to the same extent that we do not differentiate. Hence the creature's essence strives towards differentiation and struggles against primeval perilous sameness. This is called the principium individuationis. And that's kind of Nietzsche as well. The essence of life is to express, to become. This self-becoming is a kind of defiant, heroic individuality, I want to say. Very Nietzschean. We can see how this is all wrapped together, these thinkers. Anyway, and it goes on. This is, again, Philemon. This principle is the essence of the creature. From this, you can see why non-differentiation and non-distinction pose a great danger to the creature. We must therefore distinguish the qualities of the pleroma. These qualities are pairs of opposites. Fascinating. Such as the effective and the ineffective, the fullness and the emptiness, the living and the dead, the different and the same, the light and darkness, hot and cold, force and matter, time and space, good and evil, the beautiful and the ugly, the one and the many, etc. The pairs of opposites are the qualities of the pleroma that do not exist, because they cancel themselves out. As we are the pleroma itself, we also have all these qualities in us. Since our nature is grounded in differentiation, we have these qualities in the name and under the sign of differentiation, which means, first, these qualities are differentiated and separate in us. Therefore, they do not cancel each other out, but are effective. Thus, we are the victims of the pairs of opposites. The pleroma is rent within us. Second, these qualities belong to the pleroma, and we must possess and live them only in the name and under the sign of differentiation. We must differentiate ourselves from these qualities. They cancel each other out in the pleroma, but not in us. Distinction from them saves us. Going on. When we strive for the good or the beautiful, we forget our essence, which is differentiation, and we fall subject to the spell of the qualities of the pleroma, which are the pairs of opposites. We endeavour to attain the good and the beautiful, yet at the same time we also seize the evil and the ugly, since in the pleroma these are one with the good and the beautiful. But if we remain true to our essence, which is differentiation, we differentiate ourselves from the good and the beautiful, and hence from the evil and the ugly. And thus we do not fall under the spell of the pleroma, namely into nothingness and disillusion. Footnote: the notion of life and nature being constituted by opposites and polarities featured centrally in the natural philosophy of Schelling, which was taken up in McGilchrist, among others. The notion that psychic conflict took the form of a conflict of opposites, and that healing represented their resolution, featured prominently in Jung's later work. We can see how this is not exactly what I've been talking about in psychological types and going on. Anyway, it goes on. Philemon: you object. You said that difference and sameness are also qualities of the pleroma. What is it like if we strive for distinctiveness? Are we, in so doing, not true to our own nature? And must we nonetheless fall into sameness when we strive for distinctiveness? You must not forget that the pleroma has no qualities. We create these through thinking. If, therefore, you strive for distinctiveness or sameness, or any qualities whatsoever, you pursue thoughts that flow to you out of the pleroma, thoughts, namely, concerning the non-existing qualities of the pleroma. Inasmuch as you run after these thoughts, you fall again into the pleroma and attain distinctiveness and sameness at the same time. Not your thinking, but your essence, is differentiation. Therefore, you must not strive for what you conceive as distinctiveness, but for your own essence. Italicized. At bottom, therefore, there is only one striving, namely the striving for one's own essence. If you had this striving, you would not need to know anything about the pleroma and its qualities, since you would, and yet you would attain the right goal by virtue of your own essence. Since, however, thought alienates us from our essence, I must teach you that knowledge with which you can bridle your thoughts. The dead faded away grumbling and moaning, and their cries died away in the distance. In the published version of the sermons, these commentaries that follow each sermon do not appear, nor does Philemon. The person delivering the sermons has been assumed to be Basilides. These commentaries were added in Scrutinies. Fascinating. So this is now a short commentary on the first sermon to the dead. But I turned to Philemon and said, my father, you utter strange teachings. Did not the ancients teach similar things? And was it not a reprehensible heresy, removed equally from love and the truth? And why do you lay out such a teaching to this horde, which the night wind swirled up from the dark blood fields of the west? My son, Philemon replied, these dead ended their lives too early. These were seekers, and therefore still hover over their graves. Their lives were incomplete, since they knew no way beyond the one to which belief had abandoned them. Since they knew no way beyond the one to which belief had abandoned them. But since no one teaches them, I must do so. This is what love demands, since they wanted to hear, even if they grumble. But why do I impart this teaching of the ancients? I teach in this way because their Christian faith once discarded and persecuted precisely this teaching. But they repudiated Christian belief, and hence were rejected by that faith. They do not know this, and therefore I must teach them, so that their life may be fulfilled, and they can enter into death. But do you, O wise Philemon, believe what you teach? My son, Philemon replied, why do you raise this question? How could I teach what I believe? Who would give me the right to such belief? It is what I know how to say, not because I believe it, but because I know it. If I knew better, I would teach better, but it would be easy for me to believe more. Yet should I teach a belief to those who have discarded belief? And I ask you, is it good to believe something even more if one does not know better? Again, this is Jung's later commentary. Asked, do you believe in God? Jung replies, now, difficult to answer. I know. I don't need to believe. I know. Okay. Jung, but I retorted, are you certain that things really are as you say? To this Philemon answered, I do not know whether it is the best that one can know, but I know nothing better, and therefore I am certain these things are as I say. If they were otherwise, I would say something else, since I would know them to be otherwise. But these things are as I know them, since my knowledge is precisely these things themselves. Since my knowledge is precisely these things themselves. Jung, my father, is that your guarantee that you are not mistaken? Philemon, there are no mistakes in these things, Philemon replied. There are only different levels of knowledge. These things are as you know them. Only in your world are things always other than you know them, and therefore there are only mistakes in your world. After these words, Philemon bent down and touched the earth with his hands and disappeared. Okay, I'm actually going to call that now, instead of Scrutinies 4, that's going to be 7 Sermons to the Dead. Or it's going to be First Sermon to the Dead in Scrutinies, third section of the Red Book. And let's keep going.